Class, I'm going to talk to you about the important information regarding quotation and using quotation marks and other things of that sort that I have put at a link titled Important Information, How to Quote an Author According to the MLA. And this is your accompanying video for that. Well, the first thing that I've asked you to do is to look at page 234 in Soteriu. And 234 talks about how you should first mention the author and the work. Now, when you are writing an essay, if the essay is going to have some kind of validity and respect, it cannot just present your ideas. It also has to present the ideas of others. Usually the others are those authors that you are reading to give you the information. And so, for example, as you were writing about Literacy, a Family Affair, the author of that is Marina, so you needed to refer to Marina quite often, and most of you did that just fine. So what you do when you mention the author is the first mention of the author is the full name, Anita Marina. And then every mention of the author after that is just Marina, not Anita Marina, or not Anita. And most of you did that correctly, but I just want to remind you again about that. Also remember that if you are mentioning titles of books in your papers, that you have to underline them. If you're mentioning the title of the essay, like Literacy, a Family Affair, that you have to put quotation marks around it. Also, if you mention the title of a movie, it has to be underlined. Your own title of your own essay doesn't need underlining or quotation marks unless you are also, as part of your title, mentioning the title of your reading, like Literacy, a Family Affair in your title would have quotation marks, or District 9 in your title of your essay would be underlined. But again, I don't like you to use other titles in your title. The only exception of that is if you use another title in your title that you put a colon after it and then you give some more explanation. And those of you who did that, I did talk to you about that. So read page 234 carefully. There are other bits and pieces of information here that are helpful to you. But in terms of quoting and how to use quotes, page 235 is very important, and that tells you the correct MLA format for quoting in your paper. And on your handout, I've given a couple of examples of my own, and what I've done is I've done something extra that the page in your book doesn't do. And I've shown you how to also put the page number where you can find the quote. That is required according to MLA. You have to also put the page number. And page 260 in your book, that's right, 260, tells you how to do that. 235 and 260 are very, very important in terms of telling you about how to quote an author and include the page number. Note that, for example, on your handout I say, according to Svoboda, happy are those who are willing to sacrifice for their story. Notice that it's according to Svoboda, comma. Then you have your quotation mark, and quotation marks at the end of the quote, then the page number in brackets, and then your punctuation mark, period. And it has to be that way, or your teachers go crazy. I know it's a really picky thing, but MLA is about being picky, and we're very picky about how your papers have to look. And you do want good grades on your papers, right? So you want a good look. And you can, again, referring back to your handout, notice that you can also reverse that, the quotation like this. Happy are those who are willing to sacrifice for their story, says Svoboda, page 27. And notice where the quotation marks go and the punctuation mark, etc. So this is how to quote an author. And so read this carefully. The other good thing about page 235 is that it gives you some verbs that will help you introduce quotes. For example, I said according to Svoboda on the handout, and I also said says Svoboda, but there are other interesting verbs that you can use instead of says. For example, notes, discusses, states, remarks, declares, affirms, believes, implies, intimates. There's just a whole range of these, and at some point I'll try to put a much larger list online for you to take a look at. The thing is, you have to make sure that you just can't use them all interchangeably. They have to make sense, they have to fit, they have to be appropriate. So be careful about that. And the other pages that I want you to pay particular close attention to, besides 234 and 235, 235 also tells you about how to use an ellipsis. If you'll note that the example that I gave you in the wiki where you were making quotes, I used brackets and an ellipsis to reshape the quote so that it fit grammatically. And you can do that. You can reshape your quotes so that they fit grammatically in your paper. And if you want to leave a word out of the quote, you just have to use 3 dots. That's an ellipsis. And if you want to add a word to the quote so that it fits grammatically, you just have to put your word inside the brackets. Now, don't add more than 1 word usually at a time. Well, sometimes 2 words are okay. It just depends. So you can add words to a quote. You can take words away from a quote so that the quote doesn't seem weird so that the quote will go with the flow of your writing. And so that's kind of important to keep in mind. So look at those pages. And then finally, commenting on quotes. Every quote needs a comment. In other words, you give a quote, and then you have to explain the quote. You can either paraphrase the quote again, or you can explain it further. Additionally, this is very important. In keeping with this, make sure you never end a paragraph with your quote, because a quote always has to be explained. So be careful about that. Explain your quotes, and page 241 tells you how to do that, so read that very carefully. So if you have any further questions about quoting, don't hesitate to message me, and I'll do my best to help you. Otherwise, work through this carefully and make sure that you've got at least 3 good quotes in your next paper on Malcolm X. You can have more than 3 quotes, though. But the rule is no more than 25% of your paper can be quotes. For our purposes, that's a lot. That's really too much. I want your 3 quotes to be at least 1 sentence long. The rule here is a quote should not be longer than 4 lines of a paper. The 1 quote shouldn't be longer than 4 lines. So if it gets longer than 4 lines, we have to do something else about that, and I'm not going to tell you about that just yet in this paper. So I really don't want any quotes that are more than 1 or 2 sentences, and certainly they should not be longer than maybe 3.5 to 4 lines. If it goes on to a 5th line, then you've got to cut the quote back somehow or other. Okay, I think that's it for now. Thank you for paying attention to me in this really sort of crude video, but that's what we have to do in order to keep this class going. So we'll talk to you later. Bye.